If you lived in 1500 BC and had an eye infection, your doctor might have prescribed a mixture of crushed human brains and honey. If you were a Roman soldier with a gash on your leg, you'd reach for a handful of cobwebs and vinegar. And if you're sitting there thinking, "Thank God we live in the 21st century," you're right. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Our modern, sterile hospitals are built on a foundation of animal poop, toxic metals, and literal torture. Today, we're looking at the history of medicine. Not the heroic version you see in textbooks, but the disgusting, dangerous, and downright weird stuff our ancestors did that, believe it or not, paved the way for surgery, antibiotics, and the life-saving science we have today. We're going from the poop pharmacy to the Mercury Miracle, and trust me, it gets darker and more disgusting than you think. Continue watching if you dare. Let's start with the grossest part, excrement therapy. In ancient Egypt, the medical texts weren't just about herbs. They listed over 50 different types of animal dung used for healing: crocodile, donkey, gazelle, and even fly droppings. They would smear these on open wounds or even swallow them as a cure-all. Now, usually this just gave the patient tetanus or sepsis and killed them. But here is the bizarre science behind it. Certain types of animal dung actually contain antibiotic-producing fungi and bacteria. By sheer trial and error, our ancestors were stumbling toward the concept of antibiotics 3,000 years before we actually understood what a germ was. And it wasn't just Egypt. Throughout history, the power of the gross was real. For centuries, battlefield doctors noticed that wounds infested with fly larvae maggots actually healed faster. Why? Because maggots are the world's most precise surgeons. They only eat dead, necrotic tissue and leave the healthy skin alone. They even secrete an enzyme that kills harmful bacteria. Today, we've come full circle. Maggot debridement therapy is actually FDA approved. We've taken the grossest part of the trench and turned it into biosurgery to treat diabetic ulcers that modern drugs can't touch. If the poop didn't kill you, the parasites might be next. For over 2,000 years, the dominant medical theory was humorism. Doctors believed the body was filled with 4 fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. If you were sick, it meant you had too much of one, usually blood. The solution? Leeches. Thousands of them. In the 1830s alone, France imported over 40 million leeches a year for medical use. They would attach these slimy worms to your neck, your temples, or even your gums to drain the evil. But here's how this weird practice led to a breakthrough. By studying how leeches work, scientists discovered hirudin, a powerful anticoagulant in their saliva that prevents blood from clotting. Today, we don't use leeches because we're superstitious. We use them in advanced plastic surgery. If a surgeon reattaches a finger or an ear, they use leeches to drain excess blood and keep the veins open while the body heals. The vampire worm of the 1800s became the microsurgeon of the 2020s. Before we had anesthesia, we had grit and a lot of screaming. Let's talk about surgery. For most of history, surgeons weren't doctors, they were barbers. If you needed a haircut, a tooth pulled, and a leg amputated, you went to the same guy. That's actually why the barber pole is red and white. The white represents bandages and the red represents the blood. One of the most terrifying procedures was trepanning. This is the oldest surgical procedure known to man, dating back 7,000 years. They would use a flint tool to bore a hole directly into a living person's skull. They thought it released evil spirits causing headaches or epilepsy. But here's the kicker. Archaeologists have found skulls where the bone actually started to heal, meaning people survived brain surgery with stone tools and no painkillers. This dangerous trial and error was the birth of neurosurgery. Today, if you have a brain bleed after a car accident, a surgeon performs a craniotomy, which is literally just a high-tech version of trepanning to relieve pressure. We just swapped the flint for a titanium drill and added a dose of propofol. Then there's the era of heavy metals. For centuries, mercury was considered a miracle drug. Got syphilis? Use mercury. Got a skin rash? Mercury. It was so common that Lewis and Clark's expedition left a trail across America that we can still track today because they used mercury-laden laxatives called thunderbolts, and the mercury stayed in the soil where they used the latrine. Doctors would literally rub mercury into a patient's skin until they started drooling, which they thought was the poison leaving the body. In reality, it was just the mercury melting their nervous system. But mercury did kill the bacteria that caused syphilis. It was the world's first accidental chemotherapy, killing the disease slightly faster than it killed the human. This led to a massive realization. If a toxic metal could kill a bacteria, we could engineer magic bullets that kill the disease without killing the host. We traded mercury for targeted drugs and radiation. We learned how to poison the bad guys inside us while sparing the good guys. We can't talk about weird without talking about the Moldy Bread Trick. For thousands of years, from ancient Serbia to the indigenous tribes of the Americas, people put moldy bread or warm soil on open wounds. To a rational person, that sounds like a recipe for a deadly infection. But in 1928, Alexander Fleming looked at a petri dish of mold and realized it was producing a juice that killed all the bacteria around it. He named it penicillin. That mold on the bread? It was a primitive, uncontrolled version of the most important discovery in medical history. Before this, a scratch from a rosebush or a sore throat could be a death sentence. We went from the dirty habit of using mold to a global industry that has saved hundreds of millions of lives. Even the way we handle pain has weird roots. Ancient Greeks used the torpedo fish, a type of electric ray, to numb the pain of surgery. They would place the live fish on the patient's head or feet to deliver electric shocks. Today we call that transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation, or TENS therapy. We're still shocking people to block pain, we just stopped using the fish. It's easy to look back and think our ancestors were crazy, but they were the ultimate scientists. They had no microscopes, no lab coats, and no data, only observation. Every time a Roman soldier used cobwebs, which we now know have antifungal properties and vitamin K to stop bleeding, or a medieval doctor used leeches, they were adding a page to the book of human survival. Our ancestors endured the disgusting, the dangerous, and the weird so that we could have the clean, the safe, and the clinical. They did the gross work so we don't have to. So, next time you're at the pharmacy or the dentist, just be glad your prescription doesn't involve a crocodile or a live electric fish. If you enjoyed this look at the darker side of history, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. And tell me in the comments, what is the weirdest old school remedy your family still swears by? I'll see you in the next one.